Hi, I'm Valerie Espinoza, and I represent you on the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. And with me today, another honored guest, a very good employee of the New Mexico PRC. In fact, he's the Director for Transportation, Avelino Gutierrez. He's been at the PRC long before I got there, and he's been doing a great job, and that's why he is our new Transportation Director. And he's not new, he's how long have you been there at the PRC? A good
26 years and 3 months.
You love that torture, don't you?
I have loved my job. Yes.
Yes. You know, I just have to thank you, too, for always being responsive to my calls when I need you, to be responsive to the community. And that's why we have this TV program. I have had this program for at least 15 years. Right before I became county clerk, I was asked to do this program. And you know me not to have stage fright. I had stage fright back then. And so we've come a very long way to just inform the public of what we do. And that's why I wanted to have you there from the PRC so that the public knows, that we are accountable to them and just exactly what the Transportation Division is in charge of. So, you and I have stood side by side at the legislature when they were working on bills for Uber, and we worked closely on the Motor Carrier Act. So,
yes.
I want to talk a little bit talk about you and, where you went to law school and a little bit about yourself, because I want the public to know what kind of quality employees we have working at the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission.
Thank you for those kind words first, Commissioner. I'll talk very briefly about myself because I don't like to do it, but I will say that I'm homegrown, live in Albuquerque, grew up in Albuquerque, went to Del Norte High School, then went to UNM, both for my undergraduate and law degrees, and graduated in 1985 and practiced law with my dad for 5 years.
Who was your father?
Avelino V. Gutierrez. He was an attorney as well. And then came to work for the then State Corporation Commission in 1990.
Was that when it was the Corporation Commission?
Correct. Converted to it combined with the Public Utility Commission to form the Public Regulation Commission, January 1st, 1999.
You've got the history.
Yeah, but it's been very eventful and a pleasure. I couldn't think of something that I would have wanted to do more. So, and I've met a lot of great people along the way. So it's been nice, very nice.
Well, we hope to keep you a very long time, and
thank you for that.
You must be devoted. We were just having a conversation yesterday about retiring. I mean, why retire? I mean, what are you going to do?
Exactly.
They say, it doesn't mention anywhere that, you should retire. They say that, you shouldn't retire because then you get, tied down, worn out, and
bad things can happen.
Yeah, you can, go bye-bye or something.
Right.
Anyhow, what would you say? I mean, and I know I'm going to jump a little around our agenda, but I know you know how passionate I was, with Uber and
Yes.
Lyft, and I really wanted to ensure that everything was covered in terms of safety, and I still have a little issue, with the way things have worked out. But if it's an option and that's what the people want, then that's fine. But in addition to that, I still thought that, that was a challenge for me because of, they didn't have to pay to go in and out of the airports.
Right.
Now, it's up to the legislature to change the laws. And our hands, what do you think of this transition to Uber? Because you still read horror stories.
Yes.
Even though people love it. Some.
Right. There are pros and cons as with any new industry, and let's face it, transportation network companies were unlike anything we'd ever seen in the motor carrier field. First, at least with the commission, there was a fight as to whether they should even be classified as motor carriers. Of course, the TNCs took the position that they shouldn't be. There were a number of enforcement cases brought before the commission, but ultimately the legislature decided that they are a different animal, classified them as non-motor carriers, and explicitly stated that in the Transportation Network Company Act, which means that they have regulations that pertain only to them involving safety, and not so much insurance. Insurance is pretty much uniform across motor carriers and TNCs.
How about drug testing?
Drug testing is not a requirement for TNCs. But the Commission has looked at the regulations applicable to small passenger motor carriers and has decided just recently, in fact the regulations took effect yesterday, that they should be treated more like TNCs when it comes to safety. One additional requirement applicable to small passenger carriers that wasn't applicable prior to this rulemaking on small passengers is that they are required to do criminal background checks of their drivers. There was a general statutory requirement of that, but it's really been fleshed out in the small passenger carrier rule. The Commission, you all decided to do that. But as to other safety issues like drug testing, as you mentioned, that is no longer a requirement, although we're getting word from a lot of the small motor carriers that they still want to do that as a matter of liability, to try to prevent any liability that might come their way by not testing. And
I don't understand why you wouldn't want to in the first place.
Exactly.
You know?
I think that's a great a great proactive thing to do. As if you're a business person out in the real world, you'd want to do that. You're right.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, it's okay, it's competition, but you know, I think leveling the playing field is where we need to really go in reality, because
Sure.
there's still things that, you know, the regular cab companies have to, you know, uphold, and you know, then to download the device on your cell phone. I mean, I'm old school. I prefer to call a cab and just, you know, keep it that way. But
Right.
you know, I'm not going to download any apps on my phone, because then they were talking about possibly selling the information. And do you think that was true indeed?
There, at least in New Mexico, we didn't see evidence of that, but we had heard stories that they had been selling information in other locales around the nation. But I don't think, we didn't receive at least a complaint in New Mexico that had been happening.
And so thank you on that topic. And another topic that comes to my mind is, you know, when I was in Taos County, I think one of the sheriffs had mentioned, you know, he was really concerned about the tows and the weight on the back of the tow trucks and the tying it. So that's another thing you followed. I request that you took care of, and you did. Can you explain exactly, you know, what that means now for these towing companies?
Yes, we at your request, we sent out a letter to all the wreckers or towing services, reminding them of the load securement rules that are imposed by law. And those haven't changed, by the way. Not that they're small passengers or TNCs, but those remain in effect and have not changed. But we reminded them exactly what is required when they hoist a vehicle, either in a car carrier, you know, one of those flatbeds, or they use slings to tow the vehicle. Because sometimes the towed vehicle can control the wrecker as opposed to the wrecker controlling the towed vehicle. And that's a situation that can be very, very dangerous.
I wouldn't want to be behind one of those.
No. But that was a great reminder in that letter to the towing companies that they need to follow the securement rules. And those are well established in federal law and regulation.
So again, thank you for doing that too, because I just got a call saying thank you for getting that done a couple of months ago or several months ago.
Right.
Because, you know, people are more cautious and careful.
Sure.
So, and on top of the ambulance. So the towing and all these other drivers still have to pass the drug and alcohol test, yet a TNC doesn't.
Correct. The small passengers no longer have to do the drug and alcohol testing, although some will do that voluntarily. But you're right. The ambulance and the others do have to do random drug testing, continue to do that.
So, you know, our office keeps you busy enough. I mean, so I don't know how you keep up, because, you know, we have you in Mora, we have you in, you know, all over different parts of the state, and I really, again, appreciate you getting your hands on and taking the responsibility to follow through.
Thank you for that. And I there's a part of me, a small part of me, that enjoys doing public speaking, but I don't know.
You have stage fright? I don't believe that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Well, and then recently too, you, and we should probably talk in, I'm talking in generalities, but I mean about what exactly we do and the railroads. You went with me to Chama recently to talk
Yes.
to the railroad there, the Cumbres Toll Tech. So we regulate the crossings and the safety, and you know, we've had several horrible accidents, one in Dexter. You weren't the transportation director at the time, but I remember getting a call from the feds.
Yes.
I don't know if you were aware of that, to please get somebody out there to Dexter
Right.
immediately because they were en route from Washington and they couldn't be there. So I went myself, and I think Chris ended up finally going out that
Yes.
way. But those are tragedies that occur, and
Absolutely, and having a railroad program with certified inspectors is the key to allowing a quick response to the scene of a derailment or a catastrophe, if you want, even a train vehicle collision, which never works out well for the vehicle. The only issue with that now is that the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, will only allow certified railroad inspectors to respond to the scene. And right now we don't have any, and that's been one of the challenges of our at the Commission, is that often with technical people we find it difficult to retain them because they are paid more either by the federal government or private industry. So the last two railroad inspectors that we had, one left to retirement and another one left to take a job that paid substantially more with the Federal Railroad Administration. So we're in the process of restocking our Railroad Bureau. We've hired a former employee of the BNSF, Class 1 railroad here in New Mexico, and he, just today I found out, has been accepted by the Federal Railroad Administration as a journeyman, which is great news because that means he's just one step below certification.
so he's ready.
He's almost ready. He just needs some on-the-job training, and they need to continue to evaluate his progress, but at some point in the near future, we hope that he'll be certified by the Federal Railroad Administration as an inspector, which will allow him to respond to all scenes.
That is that's good news.
Yeah, we just heard that today. That's excellent. And we have another one, Tirso Lopez, that is doesn't have a lot of railroad experience. However, he's been participating with the FRA in inspections and investigations, and we hope that he'll be classified soon, probably as an apprentice, which means he'll have to start lower and it'll take him longer to get certified, but we're hoping that occurs soon as well.
And I don't think people realize, or even members, well, I won't say, but I don't think the understanding is there just of how critical each job responsibility is at the PRC. It's all different. Pipeline safety, the transportation,
Yes.
the fire marshal.
Yes.
They're all uniquely qualified and skilled.
Yes.
When I went to training at Michigan State University, I mean, that level of utility experts they're rare they're hard to find.
Yes.
So naturally, they're going to get paid. Throughout the country, big bucks. The state doesn't pay, and I think we have a glitch at SPO, the State Personnel Office, because, pardon me, we can't hire people that are just newly graduated from the universities here because of the criteria. So there's really a problem there, but there's also a problem with retention and the pay scale. Most people I know get paid, the salaries at, the lab, and they're already way above our midpoint, or even, so how do you retain and, then you train them and then they leave, and I don't blame them.